Hey everyone, welcome to Hunters Connect. In today's video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to European mount a deer skull. Doing Euro mounts is really quite simple, but there's always the option of just taking it to a taxidermist and having them take care of it. And then you're pretty much guaranteed a really professional outcome and it's going to look really nice. But if you're looking to save some money or just want to be involved in the process yourself, doing it yourself with just a propane burner and some bleach at home is pretty simple. Now you really only need a few items to do this. Obviously you're going to need a burner of some sort. What I got here is a system that is actually designed for Euro mounts, but you really don't need that. All you need is like kind of one of those turkey fryer burners and a propane tank. Get those connected as long as you get something with a flame, and then you're just going to need a metal pot big enough to hold the skull that you're working on. So other than those items, you'll just need a few tools to help you take some meat off the skull when it comes down to it. And I have an assortment of tools. I brought like 3 or 4 different knives, some big long pliers, a couple different little pick tools. I just like to have everything at my disposal. That way, like once I'm working on it, I get in the groove and I figure out which items are working best and there's some items that work better for other things. So just having a few different items to help work that meat off the skull is good to have. 2 other items that are going to be really handy for this process is just some baking soda and dish detergent. I like to put the dish detergent into the simmering water with the skull to help degrease it, and then the baking soda kind of really helps the process of getting that meat off the bone. So here I have my deer skull from this deer season, and you guys might already have the head completely removed of hide. This one still has all the hide and all the meat, like this thing's fully intact. So what I'm gonna do is put the water in the pot, get it starting to warm up, get it to that simmer level, and then while that's going, I'm gonna begin taking all the meat off of the head here. And if you have a head that's still got all the hide on it, there's really no right or wrong way to do it. If you're not saving the hide, just start cutting away and getting as much meat off of the skull as possible. So now that I have that skull skinned out and a lot of that big chunks of meat pulled off, it's pretty cleaned up. I mean, if I really wanted to spend some more time on the back, I could, but I'm just gonna go ahead and get it into the pot here and start getting that water working around it and hopefully break down some of this material. We'll probably pull it out a few times, clean it, put it back in, pull it out, take some more meat off, and just kind of have to repeat that process till it gets to your liking. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and plop this in and then put in the baking soda and dish detergent. You might not be able to see this, but I do have a pronghorn antelope skull in the boiler here. If you guys stay tuned, we will be later putting out a video on doing European mounts for pronghorn because they're slightly different than doing a deer. So if you're interested in seeing that, just stick around and we'll have that out in a week or so. But anyways, we're gonna go ahead and put this in and get the process started. I've never really seen or heard from anyone that there's a specific amount of baking soda to put in here, but I usually do 1 of these, maybe 2 of these little boxes. How much is this? I ripped the label off. These are 1-pound boxes, so I usually do 1 to 2 of them. I got 2 skulls in here, so I'll probably just do two boxes of this baking soda in there. You do want to be careful if you have this like really hot and you just go ahead and dump your baking soda in there, it might like foam over the top, so just be cautious of that. Okay, so I've had this deer head simmering in this pot for close to an hour now. And now what we're gonna do is pull it out and get it on the table and just start scraping as much meat off as we can. Now, I will say, if you have a pressure washer, that is gonna help tremendously. For the sake of this video, I don't have one, so I'm just gonna show you the scraping method. But if you have a pressure washer and a place to like put it outside and just hose it down, that high pressure hose is gonna blast off a tremendous amount of meat on this head. So if you got one, I highly suggest giving it a shot and using one. As you can see, a lot of that meat on the head has now boiled, gotten pretty hot, and it's like constricted. So it's almost worked itself right off the skull. And I'm pretty impressed with how it's looking right now. So I think this is a great time to go ahead and pull it out and start working on it. So like I said, you can see a lot of this meat has come off. This is actually really impressive. I've never actually had that happen, where the bottom palate of the mouth has almost just pulled itself right off. Wow, that's actually coming off really good. So happy with that. Very happy with that. It looks like it's pulling out tons of that nasal tissue already. Very good. So there's a few parts on this skull that I'll say to watch out for if you want to make sure you don't damage anything. Is this nasal cavity here. It's pretty fragile. Right in here and then up in the nose here. There's a couple of these, there's two cones on this side and they're very fragile. Now, I've heard some taxidermists say like, you don't truly get this thing clean until all that comes out of there, because it's almost impossible to pull out all the tissue in there without getting rid of all that cavity. And if there is tissue left up in here, it can cause this bone to yellow over time. So if you'd like, you can grab this, jam it up there, and just destroy everything in there and pull it all out. And it'll be way easier and very clean in there. But if you want to keep the cavity in there, once I start cleaning this, you'll be able to see it better. You want to see those cones and have everything intact. I think it looks pretty cool that way. So I usually will try to keep everything intact as possible and just pull as much stuff out as I can. One tip here I'll give is in this ear cavity here is like, there's this spot where the ear was. I like to jam either like a screwdriver or in this case these pliers in there and break that bone out of there, because there's a lot of tissue in there, and this helps get a lot of that stuff out of there, and easier to clean that area up in general. So don't worry, it kind of feels like you're breaking the skull, but it really helps you get all this other gross stuff out of here. And this is the back of the skull that isn't on display anyways. So back in here is where your brain cavity will be. And what I like to do is grab one of these straight sticks, straight angled picks, I guess you could call it. Or a screwdriver or anything that'll get in there. But I like to work this thing around the perimeter of that skull cavity and just try to detach the brain as much as possible from the outer edge. And then I'm going to go in there with the pliers after and try to yank it out. It's probably one of the grosser parts, but it's definitely an important part to get this stuff out of there. So then what I like to try to do is get this in there as deep as possible and like attached to a good portion, give it a twist. That was a pretty bad one, did not. But you can usually give it a good twist if you got a good, there we go. And that's a decent chunk. It's not all of it, but it's a start. So as you can see, the front of the skull is pretty cleaned up. But it's the back where you got a lot of that meat at. And that's just always gonna be the toughest part to get the meat off of. So all I usually do, pull it out the first time, get as much as I can off the front, and then start working that back. And it's gonna take another soak or two to help me get the rest of this stuff off. But yeah, that's what we'll do. So next up, we'll go ahead and put it back in the water, and then try again. So now we have gotten all of the meat off of this deer skull. It took a few times of putting it back in the pot, pulling it out, doing some more scraping, and then putting it back in. But now it's time to begin the whitening process. So whitening your skull isn't mandatory. You don't have to do it. If you like the look of it straight out of the pot, then by all means, you're done. But a lot of people will go ahead and bleach it and make it just an all white color. And I figured I'd go ahead and show you guys how to do that process. Now there's a handful of different ways to go about the bleaching process. So how I've always bleached my skulls is using the 40 volume developer along with some of this powder. This is called powder lightener. So these two together, mix them in a bowl, and that's what I use to bleach the skull. It's pretty simple. What I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna put them, I don't really have a set ratio. I've always just kind of eyeballed it. I don't know if that's good or bad, but I mean, you can kind of play with the ratios and see what's whitening, what's getting really white, what's not doing as good of a job, and kind of get it to your liking if you choose to go this route. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. And that's kind of how it looks, just a white paste, really. Again, this is another optional step, but I like to kind of take precautions of keeping the antlers from getting bleached. So I'll go ahead and use some cling wrap, and then I use this self-adhesive tape, seems to work really good. And I'll just kind of get the bases taped up and then start painting. Okay, and just like that, we're ready to go. One more thing I'll note is just remember you're working with bleach, so make sure, I guess, if you're wearing a shirt that you really like, you don't want to mess it up, put on something you don't care to get messed up if in case you get bleach on it. If you're using a table that you don't want to get messed up, put down a drop cloth or something. I'm using just a foldable camping table that I usually cut meat up on and kind of just do a bunch of random stuff on, so it's not the end of the world if this gets bleach on it. But just wanted to give you guys that heads up. So from here, we'll go ahead and just start painting it on. And it could take a couple coats. Usually just start applying, get it on nice and heavy, and then I'll let it dry and kind of like wipe off any excess that's on there, and then kind of repeat process until I think it's done. And there we have it. That's gonna be your last step when it comes to doing your own gyros. Just gonna let this dry, like I said. Once it's kind of dries, and you just wanna kind of repeat the process until it's to your desired liking, and then it's ready to go ahead and hang in the wall. So I hope you guys found this video helpful, and that maybe you guys will give gyro mounts a try on your own here soon. And if you guys have any questions or any other comments, please be sure to drop them down below, and we'd love to get back to you and hear from you guys. So thank you guys for watching Hunters Connect, and we'll see you in the next one.